Hey, summer science students, we officially have a week and a half of summer school left because it is week 3. We're in lesson 3. I'm Miss Wostowski, and let's go ahead. Okay, just a reminder that all these quizzes in yellow should be done by now, and this is just for week 3 so far. So we will have 4 more quizzes before we can close the chapter on week 3. So please try to keep up. I don't want you all rushing next week when you're trying to finish all those quizzes. It will just be miserable. Okay, so before I see you on Thursday, what you need to do is read the nervous system functions all the way to how a nerve impulse travels on grad point and take the 2 quizzes associated with those chapters. Okay, so how do we get to the lesson today? We're still on unit 2, so click on that. The screen's going to pop up. And now we're on folder 4. So we were on folder 3 yesterday, but today we're on 4. It's an itty bitty folder, and we're going to do all of it today. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start the grad point summary. Remember, this is just the main ideas that you should walk away from the lesson really understanding. It's not everything that's in the slides, it's just what I think is really important. Okay, so today we're going to learn about the nervous system, and that is an organ system that helps the body respond to the environment. And the major organs of the nervous system are the brain and the nerves. So the nervous system tells you what's happening outside of your body, in your environment, like in your house, on the street, in the woods, and it also tells your body how to respond. So like you're in the woods, you see a bear, your nervous system helps interpret that image as a bear and says run, and then makes all of your muscles and bones move so that you can get away from that bear. Just an example. So nerves are a bundle or a bunch of nerve fibers together. And the nervous system is so special, it has its own special type of cell called a neuron. N for neuron, N for nerve, N for nervous system, so it all kind of fits together. And a neuron, it has a really special shape. All right, there we go. Here's the neuron. So to me, a neuron looks like a tree that has been pulled out of the ground, roots and all, and turned sideways. So you have like the top of the tree with all the branches, then you have this long trunk, and at the end of the trunk, you have the roots. Now, the top of the tree or the top of the neuron with all those branches, we're not going to call them branches, we're going to call them dendrites. Okay, and these are like little parts of the cell that reach out, and they're going to be really important because they're going to send messages, and we're going to learn about that later. Then if I compare to a tree, I've got this long trunk, and the long part of the neuron is called the axon. Okay, so those are 2 vocabulary words you need to know for the neuron. Again, I think it looks like a tree that's been pulled out of the ground sideways. The top of the tree branches are called the dendrites. The long trunk of a tree or the long part of a neuron is called the axon. All right, you've got 2 types of neurons. And again, remember, neuron is a nerve cell in your nervous system. You've got a sensory neuron that picks up stimuli. And what stimuli is a change. So if you smell smoke in your house, that's a change because you usually don't smell like smoke, like something's burning in the oven. That's a stimuli. And when you pick up a stimuli, you get information from the internal and external environment. So that means inside and outside environment. So I always think of sensory neurons that are neurons that respond to your senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch. So the neurons that are interpreting, like if you hear a loud noise, if you hear someone scream, if you see a spider, if you touch something that's painful or hot, those are your sensory neurons. They respond to your senses. Now, usually when you respond to a stimuli or a change in the environment, you have a physical response. For example, with this guy right here, he is seeing a spider and he's tensing up, he's putting his shoulders up, and he's maybe screaming. So that's a physical response. And what helps you have that physical response is a motor neuron. And that says an impulse or a signal that causes a muscle to react. For example, if you put your hand on a hot stove, your sensory neurons are going to interpret that as hot, and your motor neurons are going to automatically jerk your hand away. So you usually don't leave your hand on something that's hot. And again, motor neurons, a physical reaction when you yank your hand away, you're using your muscles, your bones, so that's physical. All right, please stop, hit pause, because we are done with the nervous system functions. You need to go take the nervous system functions quiz. Again, my suggestion, rewind the video a few minutes, watch it one more time, maybe play it while you take the questions. That will really help. Okay, now we're going to talk about how a nerve impulse travels, and a nerve impulse is like a message. So our neurons are actually going to talk to each other. So remember, the nervous system has special cells called the neuron, N for neuron, N for nerve, N for nervous system. And neurons can talk to each other, but they don't need to touch each other to send messages. So you might think that with those long branches or dendrites that they kind of are like intertwined with each other, but they look something like this. And you notice that they're not actually touching. There is a bit of a space in between them. We're going to call that space synapse. Okay, and what's going to happen at the end of the axon, a neuron is going to release chemicals. And we're going to call these chemical messengers. I can think of a really famous chemical messenger that you might have heard of is maybe dopamine or serotonin. And these are like kind of your feel good chemical messengers. So that make you happy or make you feel relaxed. So one neuron will release that from their end of their axon, and then it's going to go to the dendrite of the next neuron. And this is how they talk. So they're not like actually using words. They're not, texting or sending signs. They're sending out chemical messengers from the end of one neuron to the top of another neuron. So again, the synapse releases chemicals that carry an impulse or signal across the gaps or spaces in neurons. Whew, tongue twister. Okay, and the message or nerve impulse is always going to travel this way. It will come from an axon, and remember that's the end, kind of, like the end of the line of a neuron. It will travel across the synapse, and remember the synapse is that space. Neurons don't touch, they have a little gap between. Hey, guess what? Neurons social distance, and that social distance we're going to call a synapse. So that chemical messenger will go from the end of one neuron across the synapse to the dendrite, which is like the top or the top branches of a neuron, and it's always going to go that direction. It's never going to reverse. Let's talk about how a nerve impulse travels. It's going to follow a path, and it's always going to go in this path. It's kind of like directions on the map. You're always going to go the same way. So you have receptors in your body, example, some in your hand, that trigger nerve impulses in the sensory neurons. So I want to give you an example that you are at a greenhouse or nursery or zoo or in the desert, and you see a cactus and you're like, I am going to poke that. So what's going to happen is you are going to complete the path of a nerve impulse. So the first thing you're going to do is the receptors in your hand is going to pick up a stimulus or change for your environment. In this example, a cactus will prick your finger, so that's not normal. You're not walking around getting your finger poked all the time. So receptors from your hand are going to trigger a nerve impulse in the sensory neurons. Remember, those are the neurons that interpret your senses, sight, taste, touch, smell. And it is going to send this message of whatever it interprets to your brain. And the brain is going to get this information and make some sort of decision or some sort of conclusion. So when your sensory neurons tell the brain that, hey, I've been poked, your brain is going to go, okay, this is painful. And then what's going to happen is your brain's going to tell your motor neurons to respond with a physical response. In this case, your brain's going to go, hey, move your hand away, dummy. Okay, so again, your receptors pick up a change in a stimulus. Your fingers get poked. Your sensory neurons say, ow, pain. your brain says that's painful, that's not good, and it tells your motor neurons to take your hand away from this cactus. So please don't go around poking cactuses. I had a friend when I was growing up, and he went to the botanical gardens. No. He went to like Kmart. I don't know if you guys remember what Kmart is. It's like Walmart. Anyways, they were selling cactuses, and he licked one, and he got all of the spines on his tongue, and his mom had to hold his tongue and take out all the spines. So don't be like Marky. That was not a good move on his part. All right, please stop. We are done with how a nerve impulse travels. You need to go and take that quiz again. Rewind the video, watch it one more time. It's a couple minutes, and then take the quiz, or watch it again and play the quiz while you take the questions. You always have the option to pause and play and take it at your own pace. When you're done with these two quizzes and you've passed, you're done for the day, and I will see you back here tomorrow.